This is the best vase, a ceramic vessel shaped like the head of a dwarf or cat-like Egyptian deity called Bes. Scientists analyzed chemical traces inside this vase and discovered something really gross that the ancient Egyptians used to drink during rituals. This and other bizarre discoveries like this give us a glimpse into what life was like thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt. Apart from the obvious stuff like the pyramids, the mummies, and the treasures they left behind, have you ever wondered what ordinary life was like in ancient Egypt and what messed up things they did, which were considered normal at the time? As a society deeply rooted in myths and superstitions, they did a lot of messed up things. In this video, we're going to uncover facts that might shock the modern sensibility. For example, what did the perverse men do to the girls who roamed freely in the streets of ancient Egypt? Or what disturbing things the embalmers did to the female corpses? Or how the pharaoh allegedly made the Nile River pregnant? Or why they applied bizarre substances like dog vagina and other gross things on their hair? Or what extreme measures the women took to avoid a pregnancy? Or what sort of foul language ancient Egyptians used to insult each other? We have answers to all of these questions, so make sure to keep watching as we uncover 29 facts about messed up practices in ancient Egypt that were considered normal at the time. Number 1. Ancient Egyptians used some horribly disgusting and bizarre methods to avoid pregnancy. Women had a few options for birth control, including different mixtures for contraceptives. Some of the nicer ones involved honey, but the braver women mixed tree leaves and crocodile dung. Then the woman had to stick that concoction inside herself or else deal with 9 months of pregnancy. Men weren't off the hook though. They had male contraceptives that weren't much better. Men had to rub onion juice onto their foreskins to keep themselves from having kids. It's not clear how many people used these contraceptives, but given the choice, the ancient Egyptians had a strong argument for staying celibate. Number 2. Men were so perverse and flashing was normal. The Greek historian Herodotus observed Egyptians during a religious festival. Families sailed toward the city of Bubastis for a sacred ceremony, but this didn't stop men from flashing girls on the way. According to Herodotus, men would cry aloud and jeer at the women and pull up their garments as they passed through towns. The fact that this behavior was openly and collectively displayed as they sailed to a sacred ceremony suggests that flashing was a usual occurrence in ancient Egyptian societies. Number 3. Corpses of beautiful women are left to decay as embalmers couldn't keep their hands off. When a man died in Egypt, he was embalmed right away. Women, though, were a different matter. By law, the beautiful and the powerful weren't sent to embalmers until they had decayed for 3 or 4 days. This was because Egyptians didn't trust the embalmers to keep their hands to themselves. This wasn't just paranoia, it was something that the Egyptians learned the hard way. An embalmer left in charge of mummifying a royal body was caught in the act by a coworker. The coworker ratted him out, and the Egyptians learned from their mistakes. After that, Egyptian rulers didn't even trust their workers with dead women. Herodotus said that in ancient Egypt, one would want to let the bodies of their loved ones sit out for 3 or 4 days to dissuade the embalmers from having sex with the corpses, as embalmers wouldn't want to have sex with a body that was already beginning to rot. Number 4. Ancient Egyptians had an unusually strange relationship with laxatives. Most Egyptians would take laxatives 3 days each month. They used a laxative made of castor oil and then got ready to spend the rest of the day on the toilet. This was before plumbing, of course, so that meant they had to clean up their mess by hand afterward. There wasn't a problem they couldn't fix with laxatives. Even diarrhea was treated with laxatives. Apparently, the idea was to get the disease out of their bodies by force and get through the whole mess as quickly as possible. Number 5. Ancient Egyptians had specialist doctors for their backsides. They had dentists for their teeth, optometrists for their eyes, and of course proctologists for their backsides. Or to translate the Egyptian word for proctologist literally, shepherds of the anus. Proctology had only come so far at the time, so the job of a shepherd of the anus mostly consisted of giving people enemas. Proctologists were specialists who knew exactly how to concoct and administer the medications that go up the buttocks and who didn't really do anything else with their time. Number 6. Egyptian doctors at the time did weird things to see if a woman is fertile. To test fertility, some doctors would rub oil all over a woman's body and tell her to lie down until the morning. If she looked fresh and good, they ruled that she was fertile. If she didn't, they said she wasn't fertile. Others did something a bit weirder. A doctor would put a clove of garlic or an onion inside a woman's vagina. In the morning, he'd smell her breath. Ancient Egyptians believed that every orifice in a woman's body was linked and that their mouths had tubes that went all the way down. If the doctor could smell the garlic, then the tubes were clear and the woman was fertile. But if the doctor couldn't smell garlic, the tubes were blocked and the woman couldn't give birth. Number 7. In ancient Egypt, men had their periods too. Ancient Egypt was plagued with diseases. In particular, schistosomiasis infected nearly everyone there. It's an illness that makes people feel sick and causes blood in the urine and stool. It was so common that they didn't even realize it was a disease. Ancient Egyptians got schistosomiasis so often that they just thought they were menstruating. They accepted that men had to menstruate just like women, and they accepted the blood coming out of their bodies as a normal part of growing up. Peeing blood was even treated as a bit of a good thing. They believed that a man who menstruated was fertile. To the Egyptians, there was no better sign that a man was ready to father a family than being infested with parasitic worms. Number 8. The pharaohs made the Nile River pregnant. Pharaohs of ancient Egypt are said to have ceremoniously masturbated into the Nile River, which was also revered for its life-giving properties. The symbolism here is pretty powerful when we consider the fact that the ancients viewed time in a circular format rather than a linear succession of moments. In fact, the ancient Egyptian word for semen, progeny, and describing the floods of the Nile were all the same word. Number 9. The royals and priests of Egypt had the freedom to commit the ultimate sin. There's an abundance of evidence showing that marriages or sexual relations between members of the nuclear family, parents and children, were common among royalty or special classes of priests since they were the representatives of the divine on earth. They were often privileged to do what was forbidden to members of the ordinary family. During the Ptolemaic period, 305 to 30 BC, King Ptolemy II even used the practice as a major theme of propaganda, stressing the nature of the couple, which could not be bound by ordinary rules of humanity. Even King Tut was not spared from the practices of incest in ancient Egypt. His parents, Akhenaten and Akhenaten's sister, were brother and sister. DNA analysis has recently been completed on 11 mummies that were closely related to Tutankhamun. The results revealed that Tutankhamun was beyond doubt the child born from a first-degree brother-sister relationship. Tut was also wed to his half-sister. Of course, serious health issues surrounded those relationships, as inbreeding among successful generations took its toll on the family. While the practice helped solidify the ruling family's power, it was not only seen in the royal class, even though it was forbidden by law. Number 10. In ancient Egypt, sex work is considered divine. Like in ancient Babylon, prostitution was seen as a divine and respectable act done for the gods. Prostitutes were afforded a relatively high social status in ancient Egypt, especially if we compare it to prostitution today. In many nations, prostitution is illegal and relegated to clandestine affairs done behind closed doors. Ancient Egyptian prostitutes, however, were able to work openly and freely and would tattoo themselves and wear red lipstick and other makeup to signify and differentiate themselves from non-prostitutes. Number 11. They went to extreme lengths to avoid pregnancy. Much like today, the ancient Egyptians also had a desire for working contraceptives. They enjoyed a sexually liberal society and accordingly enjoyed sex for the sheer pleasure it brings. Thus, good contraception was a valuable thing to have. Condoms made from sheep intestines served to protect from pregnancy and also prevented the spread of STDs. They even know what had been confirmed today, that acacia gum from the acacia tree worked as a spermicide and would reduce the likelihood of pregnancy. Women would even take animal dung and shove it into their vaginas in hopes of blocking the sperm and thus preventing pregnancy. When it came to both sex and contraception, the ancient Egyptians took it seriously and did it like no others. Number 12. In ancient Egypt, even dogs and monkeys worked for the law enforcement. Guards in ancient Egypt would often have trained animals with them. Most of the time, they were dogs. But more than a few walked around with monkeys on leashes, poised to attack. There's even a picture of them in action in one servant's tomb. It shows a thief at a market trying to make his getaway, only to have an attacked monkey on a leash tackle his leg, pulling him down to the ground and holding him in place until help arrives. Number 13. They liked X-rated stuff and had weird fetishes. Egyptians liked porn. Before X-rated websites and before Playboy magazine, there was the Turin erotic papyrus. This papyrus shows a paunchy, balding, short and scruffy man having intercourse in some rather improbable positions with a beautiful woman. The purpose of the papyrus is unknown. It may actually be a form of political satire, as a number of vignettes showing animals and human roles also appear on the same papyrus. No matter what the interpretation is, the Turin erotic papyrus is one of the most important documents we have in understanding sex in ancient Egypt. Number 14. The ancient Egyptians used sexual language to insult or to curse others. Phrases like, "May you copulate with a donkey," "May a donkey copulate with your wife," "May your child copulate with your wife." A letter from one of the workmen who built the tombs in the Valley of the Kings to another workman pointed out a bunch of his character flaws. One of the insults in this letter was, "You're not a man because you can't get your wives pregnant like your fellow men." Presumably, he had married more than once in an attempt to have children, with no results. Number 15. Egyptian men used sorcery to attract the opposite sex. Voodoo dolls were one of the most common ways of casting magic in later times in Egypt. Sometimes this magic was directed at a woman by a man. In one case, a man had a magician make for him a voodoo doll of a woman he wanted no other man to have. The figurine was pierced with bronze nails and accompanied by a lead tablet inscribed with a spell. The spell wished that she would not be able to eat, drink, or be with any other man besides him. The text summoned a demon to pull her by her hair and intestines until she came to him. Number 16. They had Blue Lotus wine and orgies. Blue Lotus wine was basically the party drug of ancient Egypt. Imagine, if you will, secret temple gatherings of elite society sharing sacred wines specially imbibed with Blue Lotus extract. These parties, much as the rest of Egyptian society, were sexually themed. The famed aphrodisiac qualities of the Blue Lotus led no doubt to religiously charged orgies. You can see evidence of this in countless murals, papyrus, and temples throughout Egypt, including the Turin Papyrus shown below. Number 17. In ancient Egypt, if a master died, the servants had to die too. Because of their strong belief in an afterlife, the ancient Egyptians were dedicated to ensuring that they carried the things they would need into their afterlife. In the case of pharaohs, who were considered to be the most important people alive, they required slaves in the afterlife if they were to continue living lives of comfort and luxury even after death. Many other individuals who owned slaves would also often be buried with their slaves. It was as if the slaves were simply moving to a new house or city with their masters. Number 18. Ancient Egyptians had zero tolerance for blasphemy. One of the worst crimes that an individual could commit was disrespect or offend the sun god. For example, if an individual robbed or vandalized a temple, spoke words of disrespect directed toward the god, or was found guilty of any other actions that could be considered to be offensive to him, he or she would be sentenced to be burned alive. Number 19. They had some bizarre procedures to find out the gender of an unborn child. According to a 3,500-year-old papyrus that was found in Egypt, the ancient Egyptians had their own ways of determining whether an unborn child was going to be a boy or a girl. The papyrus read that the pregnant woman must urinate into a bag filled with wheat and a bag filled with barley. If the barley sprouted first, that would mean she was having a boy, and if the wheat sprouted first, that meant she was having a girl. If neither of the grains sprouted, that meant that the woman was not pregnant. Number 20. Turtle shells and dog vaginas are all part of their hair care routine. Egyptians were obsessed with keeping their hair looking healthy and young, which is why they went through a lot of trouble to come up with remedies for graying hair. One of the first remedies that they came up with involved cooking the blood of a black calf with oil and applying it to the hair. Another involved cooking a turtle shell and the vertebrae of a bird in oil. Yet another involved cooking a donkey's hood with a female dog's vagina. Another disgusting one used rotten donkey liver cut into small balls and cooked with oil for application. Another one of the most strangest and most common treatments involves sautéing the leg of a female greyhound in oil and adding the hoof of a donkey to the mix, and applying the resulting oil to the individual's scalp. Number 21. Fake nipples for men. In ancient Egyptian art, men were often depicted with full breasts and fake nipples, symbolizing fertility and power. Number 22. Weird-looking skulls of mummies were not an accident. In ancient Egypt, a practice known as cranial deformation or artificial skull elongation was observed among certain members of the elite class. Infants' heads were bound tightly with cloth or other materials to intentionally shape the skull into an elongated form. This unique practice was considered a symbol of beauty and nobility within their society. Number 23. Ancient Egyptians did sick things to their pets. They loved their pets so much that they were buried with them. If a pet died before its owner, the solution was easy. The pet was mummified and placed in the tomb to await its master. But what about those times when the master went into the afterlife first? In some cases, pharaohs would leave instructions for their pets to be taken care of until its natural death, at which point it was mummified and placed in the tomb. But what about those instances where no instructions were explicitly given? In many cases, the pharaoh's beloved pet was killed so that it would be mummified and placed in the tomb along with its dead owner. Number 24. They offered blood to appease gods. Bloodletting rituals were deeply intertwined with ancient Egyptian magic and medicine. The blood was considered a powerful life force, and offering it was thought to appease gods or invoke spiritual protection. Number 25. Crocodile sacrifices was considered an act of worship. Ancient Egyptians captured crocodiles, killed them, and mummified them as a sacrifice to the gods. As strong believers in life after death, offering these sacrifices was the ultimate way to worship Sobek, an Egyptian deity associated with the Nile crocodile, after his death. Number 26. Unhygienic dental hygiene practices. Whilst they hadn't established dentistry, they did create the world's oldest known formula for toothpaste. Ancient Egyptians used a combination of powders derived from ox hooves, ashes, burnt eggshells, and pumice on their teeth and gums to protect the teeth from hygiene issues. Delicious. Thank the Lord for proper toothpaste. Good morning kisses wouldn't exist otherwise. Number 27. The ritual drinks had fruit alcohol with a twist of disgusting bodily fluids. Scientists had uncovered the secret ingredients of an extraordinary liquid concoction used for rituals in Egypt more than 2,000 years ago. They analyzed chemical traces inside a Bes vase, a ceramic vessel shaped like the head of the dwarf or cat-like Egyptian deity Bes. Traces of presence of a fermented alcoholic liquid derived from the fruit were found, as well as psychoactive compounds from plants to induce dreamlike visions. For an extra kick, they added bodily fluids to the mix, such as human blood, breast milk, and even vaginal and oral mucus. 28. Women used birth bricks to deliver their babies. The standard practice of childbirth in ancient Egypt has long been known from papyrus texts. A woman would deliver her baby while squatting on 2 large bricks, each colorfully decorated with scenes to invoke the magic of gods for the health and happiness of mother and child. Number 29. They mutilated their captured enemies. Severed human hands found in Egypt may have belonged to enemy warriors who were captured around 3,500 years ago, a gruesome new study shows. 12 hands were found in the Hyksos Palace in northern Egypt's ancient city of Avaris, former territory of the ancient Hyksos people and now an archaeological site. Researchers in Germany think the appendages were likely dissected from the right arms of 11 adult males and 1 female, potentially when they were still alive. They hinted a grisly ceremony that was performed at the palace on the orders of the royal members of the dynasty. It's possible they belonged to enemy warriors who were captured before having their hands chopped off and thrown into pits for public display. If you enjoyed this video, we are 100% sure that you'll love our video about 69 extremely weird facts about the world's most evil dictators. If you want to know why Stalin used to examine people's feces, or why Hitler would inject himself with bull semen and other bizarre facts about dictators, make sure to click on this video right now.